Might have even had a chat to him.
He'd be a good guy to have a chat with. He's a former copper and a lawyer and a prosecutor. He's got a really, really interesting background. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
got nothing on you though, aren't you a surgeon?
Oh yeah, but I think he's got lots of experience on the ground as a copper. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's good. So that's great. And then in Bergen, I used to be a war surgeon in Afghanistan with United with the Red Cross, and
Yeah.
I operated with a surgeon from Bergen Hospital.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because
That's
I,
awesome.
I live in Oslo at the moment, but I'm just in Bergen for work.
Yeah, mate. Some fascinating comparisons between Norway and Australia. But anyway, mate, let's jump in. So how do you do it? I'd love to do any sort of questions you've got, but you want to
Oh
make the
yeah,
whole
well,
thing about
more of it's
5 minutes
honestly
long?
just a chat, eh? Or
Yeah,
just a chat, and you can just see what comes up. Like
yeah. No,
have a
that's
bit of a
fine, buddy.
laugh.
Fine. And then you
Doesn't have to
record
go
it,
for long.
and I'm very happy. Just put it up as it is.
All right, no worries, no worries. So I'll just get started.
Yeah. Great.
Guys, could you
So
please give
before we start, mate, is it you just asking questions and James listening in, or do you guys want to
oh,
throw between the two of you?
bit of both, just a bit of a chat.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that's fine. All right, fire away.
No worries. All right, guys, could you please give a warm Mills and Gryllz show welcome to the member for Bowman, Mr. Andrew LAMMING. How you going?
Great to be with you, gentlemen. And I know that you're calling from interstate and overseas. So humble Redland City is very, very happy to be on the line.
Thank you. We have one bloke, Millsy here, hailing all the way from Capella, and myself, I am from Point Lookout, Stradbroke Island. So there you go.
It's
Before,
it's
before
funny. You go all around the world, Grills, don't we? But there's no place like home. The Redlands is a pretty special nook.
Look, you're right. And it's quite common for people to say that their neck of the woods is unique. But, good luck finding another subtropical bay with accommodated islands where people commute to a major capital city. Beautiful, the diversity of both mangrove and beaches and estuarine locations and lots of native wildlife, and people are able to have a incredible suburban life so close to all the services of a major city. You're going to have to go a long way to find something like that anywhere else in the world.
yeah, exactly. Before we get into the politics talk, I just want to introduce you kind of properly, because there's a lot of young people in the Redlands that listen to our podcast, even though it isn't that great audio quality. There are a fair few people in the Redlands that listen. Personally, I don't really know much about politics, and we've all heard of you before, as you've been in office since I think like 2004 or something, or even when I was
Yep.
going to high school. If you wouldn't mind just briefly introducing yourself and a little bit about how you got into politics and
Sure.
what is it that an MP does? What does a member of parliament do? Because a lot of young people like myself and Millsy really, really don't know exactly.
So my old job was being a doctor, and that's problem solving. So you wake up, go to work, there's a waiting room full of patients, and they've all got a different problem. Politics is just one step from that. It's a job of what we call last resort. So for all those problems out there that your neighbourhood can't fix up, your family can't sort out, media can't sort out, it all ends up in the lap of politicians. So some of these are global problems, some of them are just local hooning problems and everything in between. So I've now got a waiting room, and they're Redlanders who have different issues that they haven't been able to sort out online or with a company, haven't been able to sort out with a PNC or the local sporting club, and all of those problems end up in the lap of a politician. And I love that challenge every day, not really knowing what my job will be. And if you imagine it as working your way along a cliff, you're looking for tiny cracks and opportunities that you can exploit to fix these problems that are otherwise facing doors that people can't open. And opening those doors for good people is the upside of the job. The downside is you can't fix everyone's problem, and your public property, and Aussies love having a crack. So if they think there's an issue out there, the buck stops with politicians, so we do cop a lot of flack, and that's just part of the job. We're paid well, and we've got to do as well as we can with the problems that present us each day while we're in the job, and every 3 years we get a performance review and we can be voted out. So that's the other part of the job.
That's a question also fan of the show, Joel, one of our fans and members of the show, Joel, had for you is how do you manage to what's the way to word this? Because right, you have to be re-voted in every election, right?
Yes.
So how do you, if you've been in office since 2004, is it hard to kind of
that's a good effort.
Stay on top of the game, so to speak? And when you say about fixing problems, you might be fixing one person's problem, but in doing that, you're getting on the nerves of another person that has the problem with the opposite fix. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the second part, not so hard. In most cases, it's not what we call a zero-sum game, which is that for everyone who wins, someone loses. But in the broader sense, you're quite right. Allocating resources, and we collect the tax and then have to give it out. Every dollar could be spent on either your school, your hospital, or someone else's school or hospital. So the two parts of the challenge is, first of all, batting to get a slice of the pie into Redlands. And the second one is allocative between different groups. And you can talk about noisy minorities, you can talk about the silent majority. The job for me is to identify not so much the noisy wheel, but to work out where money is going to really make a difference. It's only a limited amount I've got. So where is that dollar best spent? So female change rooms so that young girls take up a sport is at the moment really important. It's just ridiculous expecting them to go into stinky change rooms with urinals and still want to play sport. So that's been a focus. We've got the one hospital here. We've only got one bay and one stratty, so we've got to make sure that's tourism ready. And then we've got to make tough calls about how much goes into each pot. So you're right, you collect opponents like barnacles on the hull of a boat, and you've just got to make sure that at different times you're then delivering for them so that they don't work against you actively, going into an election campaign.
Yeah, okay. And I suppose popularity is a big thing as well, right? How do you manage to stay popular over all these years?
Yes.
Because I'm sure not everyone is a fan of Andrew Lamming, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's just part of the job, but...
Yes. So it's about being visible in a positive way. We look at how many people are unhappy with your work compared to happy, and sadly, most people make a decision based on how often they see you in the paper. If they see you in the paper a lot, they think you're working. But we do have a measure where we say to people, do you have a generally negative or positive assessment of public figures? And we subtract the negatives from the positive, and we end up with a net preference. And the game is really to keep that number not only positive, but in double figures. And so we do quite scientifically poll communities to try and understand that. And if you do get it wrong, that's going to be bad news.
But then I suppose you also got the people, which in my opinion, probably happens to be a lot of the younger people as well, that kind of just pull politicians, whether they're Labor or Liberal, doesn't matter, into that negative sort of category, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But of course, they have a forced preference every 3 years, and they can only choose the politicians that are on the ticket. And at that level, so someone who is in politics has a slightly higher name recognition, but for candidates, they've got to have a really, really, compelling alternative. So the job of the politician is to get out there and work out what people value and what they really want, how they really feel. And that's the strength of democracy, is that they're constantly under that pressure to perform and deliver.
Hey, Andrew.
Gryllz.
I got a question. So on one of the lighter notes, over all the years since 2004, what's some of your proudest moments or things that you've achieved that otherwise wouldn't have come about, that you're real notch on the belt type stuff?
Look, it's a good question, because money automatically flows into communities, and you could have a chimpanzee as your federal MP, and there'll be grants and there'll be money given out, right? So the question really is, what are you changing? What's different because you were sitting in the seat and you were doing the job? And that applies to every job, right? So no matter what job you're doing, you ought to be saying, how do I do this job in a unique way that no one else would do it? That's good. And so a couple of examples there are where you've identified a problem like a whole ton of land at Birkdale that was just locked up and never used, and we managed to get the federal government to divest it, sell it back to the community, and that land on Birkdale Road, as you drive up from Capalaba on your left, is now going to become a really fantastic public space. And the road just nearby, Rickett and Greencamp, as you go up to Wynnum, was an absolute disaster, and there's not really any fund to repair that road. So we found a way to get that done. And then lastly, it's not always local, because ultimately national policy gets shaped by 150 politicians. So definitely the biggest change I've made personally was identifying that there was a whole ton of waste in how much we're paying for drugs when you go into a pharmacy. And I developed a new model, and eventually both parties supported it. And that reform has saved Australia about 20 billion, not million, billion dollars that's been able to be spent in other parts of the health system. And that's a personal outcome. So there's really been very few policies of that size. So there's a lot of loose money in the system, and you need someone to push it through and make it reality. And that was my big one from about 10 years ago.
Tougher question.
That's a good one.
The same question, but the opposite. Do you know what I mean? So, like, if there's anything, James was saying, the biggest notches on your belt over your time in office. What about, you know, like, just being honest? Like, of course, there's probably things that happened that you didn't like, or?
Oh, easy question. You think about them every day. So one of them was writing a opinion piece on teachers, and the newspaper said, hey, look, you know, we don't want to print your story, but would you let us pick pieces out of it and do a story about it? And I agreed to it. So it came across as me saying that teachers need to work longer and work through their holidays, when in fact what I was saying was that they need to be paid for any overtime they do. So that would definitely be the worst thing. And the mistake there was letting them just take that article out of context and print a sentence here and a sentence there. So I had to deal with thousands of teachers all over Australia on social media, trying to answer them one at a time, saying, you know, of course I don't want you working on holidays, but because you take all this work home with you, I'm demanding that you get paid for those hours as a way of stopping schools from overworking teachers. So that's probably the worst thing I've had to face. And secondly, maybe the handstand skull, downing a beer on Australia Day.
Oh, no.
And the worst thing about that is everyone wants me to do it everywhere I go.
It's the old Bob Hawke syndrome.
That's right.
Oh, no, come on. Like, you probably... I would have thought that would have gained you more voters than what it would have lost, probably. Like, yeah, I know it sounds ridiculous, but the young crew, you know, they want a bit of a lively bloke. Like when you used to go to the Alex Hills Hotel and just meet with everyone. That was cool.
So in politics, we talk about just doing the things people expect isn't enough, and doing things that are least expected are the most noticed. And again, they've got to be good things. So, you know, my effort to go to the Alex, and my wife gives me a one-night pass every year. So she gives me what we call the pit pass, and I get to spend one night at the pit, you know, with a team of volunteers, and we push a local non-profit and try and raise awareness for them at the pit. And despite rumours, I don't buy anyone free drinks, but certainly not alcoholic ones. And, you know, I think people will always remember that. And they'll say that in that narrow window of time where the pit is the place to be, they can remember seeing me there and asking who brought their dad.
No, but is the pit still going? I haven't been there in so many years. Is it still a meeting place for all the young crowd?
Mate, it is the beating heart.
Oh, the beating heart of the Redlands. Yeah,
What did
here
they
first.
what did they do there? I noticed they upgraded it with business suites. Is that getting much use?
Yeah, those
You,
suites are really successful because there's very little available in the area. But
But who
no,
wants to go to
there's
Alex Hills to have their conference,
well,
you
it's
know?
a big conference centre now, and up until now we've had to go into South Bank, so it's brought a lot of stimulus to the local economy. And second, they're really doing it up for that broader market now, and it's possible that the pit may come to an end at some stage, and they'll use that space for some other purpose, like again for conference facilities. That would
Okay.
be a
Well,
tragedy.
yeah,
I
it is pretty cool. Like there's no other spot in the Redlands where you can sort of go if you want your party to keep going like the pit is there. Like I think the
No,
Elysium used to be something, but
yeah,
they closed that
yeah.
down.
No,
Would they ever
Elysium's still
open
going
some?
strong. Elysium's going
It is.
strong. Fiction's going strong. 1989 is going well. So, yeah, Redlands are spoiled for places. And, of course, the big one is Toondah Harbour, this proposal to add a whole lot of apartments down at that Cleveland port area that heads off to Straddie. Because if that happens, this will be only the second or third major retail, recreational, residential hub outside of the Brisbane CBD. So it will be an absolute game changer for Redlands. I'm not taking sides, but I know that that proposal is currently being considered in Canberra.
okay.
Oh, true.
What about speaking of partying though? Speaking of partying, pill testing, something a bit controversial. What is pill testing, and where do you stand on the matter?
Well, I'm probably the most vocal politician on this topic. There's all state governments and oppositions and police services in Australia are opposed to pill testing, so I've got plenty of allies. But I'm regularly just the one who puts up the reasons why pill testing could be a bad thing.
What
I'm
is
not.
pill testing? Like
So you can
what is
bring
it?
in your MDMA or your pills, and you can work out if they're pure or not. So the idea of pill testing in a rec location like a festival is to just make sure that there's no serious contaminants or other substances in a pill that you might purchase. And at the moment, they've trialled in ACT the possibility of doing it inside a festival. So my medical background, I just want to make sure they're using the right machine. And at the moment, they're using a cheaper machine that is far more unreliable than I think we need. And secondly, I've got my doubts about doing it in the middle of a festival. My view is that, like the European model, the testing should happen away from the festival so that you don't have to take your pills into a festival to get them tested.
So I guess the two arguments is A, it could condone drug taking, and then
Yep.
B, the other one is people are going to take drugs regardless at a music festival, and wouldn't you rather them be safe?
That's
Kind
right.
of
They're the
argument.
competing issues. And there's a third issue that most people don't pick up, and that is, of all the people with the pills, who would actually use pill testing? And the fear is that the worried well, the young, the curious, and the educated may bring in their pill to go through that exercise. What about the preloading, absolutely crazy, multi-dropping polypharmacy, mixing cannabis with alcohol, with a number of pills, and turns up there and they wouldn't be allowed in a tent because they're already intoxicated anyway. And these are the kids that are dying. So the third issue really is what we call selection bias. I need to make sure that the people that are dying are the ones that are going to use the tent. There's no point testing thousands of pills that were not going to do anyone any harm. And lastly, if I'm testing pills, what happens if a dirty pill is returned to the festival that the state has now confirmed is dirty? And secondly, does telling people that a pill is pure change their behaviour in any way or increase the propensity to take that pill?
Oh,
So
like
super careful.
increase the amount they take as well,
Or the
because I
confidence
suppose
to take it.
you can overdose. Like I
Yeah.
mean, like you could I have no medical training whatsoever, but you could overdose on something that's like quote pure as well. Could you like?
Well, all of the deaths are due to that. So all of the deaths we've investigated are due to MDMA overdose, not to impurities or contaminants. So what we're saying is the real enemy aren't these contaminants. And don't forget, contaminants are mostly added to the pill for a particular effect anyway. So they're often used to create more of an LSD-like effect to MDMA as a marketing ploy. But if you don't realize it's in there, taking too many pills can be highly toxic. So that's your biggest risk. So we need to be able to know that it's in the pill, but also know how much is in the pill. And lastly, if people are just taking the pill back out, they often don't wait for the second pill to work and they take the third pill combined with dehydration and other drugs. The last problem is that there's no ICU skilled specialist facilities at these festivals, just basically a GP. And the New South Wales approach is to move basically an ICU into the festival that can fully medically treat someone no matter how overdosed they are. And there's a lot to be said for that policy.
Well, yeah. But being real as well, though, like, you know what I mean? Young people experiment with this stuff, and like, it's not a new thing, you know? Like, I don't have any stats to back this up, but I believe that at least 70%, maybe less, maybe more, of humans have tried some form of, or humans in, you know, our kind of society have tried some kind of illicit drug, you know what I mean? And it's the people that aren't probably, that are more nervous to take it, or they're more experimental. Like, wouldn't you want them to get it to, you know what I mean? That, like, wouldn't they want to not take something bad, so to speak? I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the definite upside is the counselling. So there's no doubt counselling's great, and there's no doubt that in very rare circumstances we do find the I think it's pentolone, the little addition which has caused some serious overdoses in New Zealand, but every death in Australia was just multi-dropping of standard MDMA. So we don't want to overpromise. I don't think pill testing will save those people, but pill testing can provide lots of information potentially about, there appears to be some pentolone, so be careful. But even without the pentolone, I'd be saying this is pure MDMA, be careful. And we don't know what they do when they leave the tent. We don't know if they take 1, 2, or 3 of those tablets. And certainly if one pill is dirty, it doesn't have to be surrendered. So someone can return to the festival knowing it's dirty and sell it saying that it's clean. And that sets up the state then, who are potentially responsible for having tested the pill.
Because I reckon...
I was just going to say, I see where you're coming from, Andrew, because it is the people who sort of, if they've lost the will to take care of himself in that way with what they're taking, that person isn't going to that tent. And that person's the same person that would probably sell it onwards as well. So there's more factors to consider, because I know, Gryllz, you were saying, like, is that going to be, like, people just need to know, but there's more things going into that argument. Like, it could just be a waste of money. So
look, I think there's a lot of people that benefit from the counselling, but don't forget the counselling in that tent can happen anyway. You just basically say, hey, we've got these grilled vouchers, come in for a $20 grilled voucher, and everyone's hungry at a festival, right? They'd all queue up and talk about their pills. But what I'm saying is, you'd say to them, I don't know what's in this pill, but I'm telling you, don't take it. It's very risky. That's the same counselling as they're giving in that tent anyway. And you're saying people are going to take the tablet? Well, they're going to take it whether you test it or not. But some, where is evidence that about 6 people have thrown their pill away as a result of the counselling in a pill testing operation. But don't forget, there'd be 600 or even 1,000 of those dirty pills all around the festival being taken by people anyway, and they don't die.
I get it.
So it's like, what proportion of all of those dirty pills out there are going through the tent? At the moment, it's under 1%. So which 1% is it?
Yeah, and like, are the people who, like, say all them people find out their pills are dirty, back on your point, Gryllz, you're not going to have 1,500 people just go, oh, well, I'm just going to drink alcohol at this festival now. Like
if you're pissed, if you're under the influence, if you're drunk or on something, I don't know, personally though, if I had a pill of something, not saying I take illicit drugs, but just in this scenario I do, and someone told me don't take this, it's I would throw it away, of course I would. But yeah,
Good.
then what about all the other people that
Yeah.
Well, some would
you know?
on-sell it. Some would on-sell it. Some would crack it into quarters and take a quarter per hour, and then say there was nothing wrong with that tablet. So everyone else says, "Oh, okay, then I'll do it." The third one's cocktailing. So you crush that pill up with 4 that are clean, and then share it. And so it's
Wow,
unlikely that people
that's
does.
full on, eh?
Yeah, well, they're serious. You've just dropped $50 on it, right? It's the cost of, it's a cost of a night out, and you might have 6 of them. So people are going to do desperate stuff, and they've already taken a pill, so they're preloaded. And lastly, a lot of these people that might turn up with a pill can't get pill tested because they're not sober. So they look in your
So
eyes.
you have to be sober to get it
Right.
tested.
And everyone who's died had preloaded. So they would have
But
been
you have to
away.
be sober to get it tested.
Because you can't be counseled legally.
Oh, okay. Because I would be thinking that, like, because you make better judgment calls when you're sober about this stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, I would feel like it's the intoxicated people that do need the counselling, that do need the.
Yeah. Well, they'll still try and counsel, and they'll have health people there, but technically you can't be in their trial, and you can't be pill tested if you're intoxicated. And they'll get a second person over, and if they look in your eyes and you're dilated, they just say, "Look, sorry, we can't counsel you in this state. We still warn you, don't take any tablets, but you're not part of that trial."
Okay, so what's the other solution then? If like pill testing is kind of a waste of time and money, is there another solution? Like, what's the other solution then?
Well, the other solution is tons of counselling with incentives to attend it, such as giving out free food vouchers. And secondly, having an ICU. So, okay, so you have an ICU and everyone says, "What's that over there?" It's like, beeping lights and guys in white jackets and people in beds. They're the people that took drugs, and they're getting intubated and carried out in ambulances. So you want to see a great big hospital ward in the festival to send a really clear signal just how dumb it is taking stuff that people have mixed up in the kitchen sink.
Yeah, okay.
That would work. That would work. I reckon if you've seen someone like that, you'd be like, "Whoa." Like, it's not my party.
Anyway, not an easy problem. Not an easy problem.
Not an easy problem. What about a few, like, because I did ask a few people if they had any questions, and one of them's a funny one, which I'll ask you in a sec. But what about the legalization of marijuana?
Hey, good one. So that's mostly a state issue. As a doctor, I'm absolutely certain that long-term marijuana use is definitely leading to mental illness, and mental illness is completely out of control. So believe it or not, some people make a stronger case for legalization of other drugs than marijuana because of the long-term mental health effects of cannabis use. So you can Google that topic, and I'm definitely in the just leaving things as they are at the moment stage until we can better understand what part of marijuana is causing that problem, because increasingly medicinal cannabis is now legal, where they've separated out the up to 200 different molecules of cannabis that have a health impact, and we need to work out what each of them do. It's a remarkable substance, but legalizing cannabis, I think, is the worst option because of the gateway effect, the number of people who would then access it, and the fact that it's literally hundreds of chemicals that you're ingesting, and we don't know what each of these do.
Okay, cool. And the other question I had was, it's a little bit of fan mail for you, and it's kind of a funny one, so just keep an open mind on this one.
Yeah.
All right. Says, "Hi Andrew, big fan. My name is Bo Wormsley, and I run a roofing company here in the Redlands called Bo Wormsley Roofing. I wanted to ask you what you think you will do when you leave politics. Have you had any thoughts into cooking and selling your own brand of Lamingtons? I feel the play on words would be very successful in promoting your brand, as your last name is Lamming, and also you could save. Sorry. Also, you you would save a lot of money, as all you would have to do is add the letters TONS to all the billboards and bus stops. Can we expect to see Andrew Lamming's Lamingtons anytime soon? Yours sincerely, the crew at Bo Walmsley Roofing.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Bo
know,
is
right?
one forward thinker. I need him on my team. I know how hard roofing is. That is one very, very tough occupation. Look, I've always been a bit of a lightweight with Lamingtons. I just go to the bakery and buy them. And and I did have a political campaign in 2010, and so we decided to make the slogan Lamington.
Oh, really?
And then
So it's been
ever
done.
since, yeah, so just Lamming and then the number 10. We then decided 3 years later that it was just a little bit creepy to go to Lamington. So we never did that. And we now just add the number in each year. So this year was Lamming 19. So I'd probably like to work in international aid when I finish politics, and that would be setting up health and education systems in developing countries. And I'd just definitely take Lamington manufacturing to the world, because this is an Australian New Zealand dessert, and it actually originates out of Brisbane. And so my
Does it?
gift to the developing world, I would close the gap on access to Lamingtons. It is an absolute injustice that these countries are denied housing, education, decent healthcare, vaccinations, and Lamingtons.
In Lamingtons. Yeah, perfect. Well, Mills, do you have anything else to add?
Oh,
Nah.
no, I just love catching up with you guys. No other questions? Am
Nah,
I
it's
escaping the
good.
hard ones?
It's been good to have you on the show, Andrew. I wish you the
Anyway, it's
best
been
of luck.
Look, thank you. Very envious of Woolgoolga, but I have to say Bergen takes the cake. That's a pretty flash part of the world, mate.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. All right. Too easy. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
See you.
Catch you, Andrew.
Hooroo.
Peace.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Oh, yeah. Cheers.
Yep.